A little to the left? Nope, too far. Oh, hey there. Welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett. If you've never listened to the show before, welcome. You should be sure to subscribe. And if you've done that, you should leave a review. And if you've already done both of those things, you should tell a friend about the show. In addition to providing entertaining and informative photography-related information, I also go on adventures with the crew of the Starship Fibonacci. At the moment, I'm taking portraits of Gothamus Prime, a sentient city. On a related note, in this episode of the podcast, I'm talking with street photographer Phil Penman about how the cities he photographs have a unique character, all their own. We talk about the differences between certain cities around the world and techniques that have served him well over the years for capturing amazing photos consistently. All of that after the break. Yeah, don't worry. I am getting your good side. Hey, photographers. Are you ready to say goodbye to the chaos of scattered contracts, missed leads? Hey, photographers. Are you ready to say goodbye to the chaos of scattered contracts, missed leads, and disorganized schedules? Then you should try Pixify, your all-in-one client relationship management software that'll take your business to the next level. Pixify brings order to your business chaos by streamlining your workflow, manage digital contracts, effortlessly track leads and clients, and organize your schedule all from one intuitive platform. Impress your clients with personalized and branded communications. From email templates to booking pages, Pixify ensures every interaction reflects your unique brand, building trust and loyalty. You can say goodbye to scheduling headaches. Pixify's scheduling tools make it easy for you to book appointments with clients and for you to keep your calendar organized. Deliver a VIP experience with personalized client portals. Your clients can access important documents, view their project progress, and interact with ease. And most importantly, no more chasing payments. Pixify automates your invoicing and payment processing, ensuring you get paid on time, every time. I've been using Pixify for over a decade, and it has saved me countless hours and a lot of money. I tried a number of other CRM options before settling on Pixify because Pixify offered the most robust set of tools that also allowed me to truly connect and foster my relationships with my clients. I highly recommend it. And you can save 20% on annual Pixify programs when you use our link, nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/Pixify. You can also find that link in the episode notes. Save big money and save yourself time. Time, the one thing which you can never get back. Pixify saves me hundreds of hours every year that I can spend on tasks that make my business money or by just relaxing and getting away from work. So what are you waiting for? Visit nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/Pixify and save 20% today. Hello, and welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett, and I'm here today with street photographer Phil Penman. Welcome, Phil.
Hey, Casey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on, man.
You're very, very welcome. And we're going to start off, before we get deep into conversation, with the dice breaker, which is just I roll a 20-sided die, and we get a topic of conversation to kind of get things going. It's a 12. All right. What's your dream dinner party? Who are you inviting? Anybody, dead or alive? You can invite anyone.
Wow. Dream dinner party. That's pretty good. My gran, for one. I'd like to see her again. Musk. I think he'd be pretty fascinating.
To
be honest,
to be in a conversation with him.
No, like just because I always love, believe it or not, I love watching all the CEO podcasts. Because we're lucky now that we have like all these podcasts. They go on for like 2.5 hours. Like there was a Bezos one with Lex Friedman recently, like 2.5 hours. Like, when did you ever get that before? To like, start to get inside the mind of these people.
Just to be like to see what's really going on, as opposed to just newspaper articles back in the early 1900s when you just get like some like newspaper thing about the Rockefellers or anybody like that. You don't really get the access that you do now.
it's pretty amazing the access we get. So he would definitely be one I would love to like here's some of his thoughts. Like the stuff with Bezos, obviously he'd be fascinating. The one that everyone always goes for all the time is Adolf. That
Do
that
they?
he's that yeah, that's like number one. That's not definitely not mine. Yeah, no, I'm interested by the business guys. I always if you put me like in a room with like Bezos, Diamond, all the current ones,
Oh,
to because I
Jamie.
want to. Yeah, I always find it fascinating whenever you watch things with him talking about how he does business, and then people that I know work for the company are like the polar opposite of
Right.
what he wants.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Doesn't
I think
doesn't doesn't add up. But yeah, I'd like to know right where we're going, not kind of where we've been.
yeah, I feel like where I understand what you're saying, like kind of have a sense of which way the world is turning. What they're seeing, or I don't know. Yeah, I think at least that's what I'm gleaning, like what their thoughts on things are. I don't know. Mine is there are creative minded people that I would love to just sit down and have a conversation with. I mean, I think Bourdain would be
Oh god, yeah,
one, or Frank
smart guy.
Zappa. Zappa was really super smart and way ahead of his time.
Yeah,
Trying to think of who else there's creatively. I mean, I almost ran into him once when I was photographing uh, a gig. Uh, David Lynch. Just 'cause I
yeah,
think he'd be so like David Lynch, David Byrne, John Waters, like those guys. Just to like sit and like listen to them talk about something and just
yeah.
get that sort of the insight into their process. That's that sort of thing fascinates me. Whereas like Bourdain, I think
Yeah,
we just talk about food and have a beer, and that'd be a lot of fun.
I got to meet a lot of them because of my old job
Oh yeah.
and working on celebrity. So I actually got to hang with quite a lot of them. And my wife's also she's in the entertainment business as well. And hers was she's interviewed everyone at this point. Hers was David Bowie. She said
Oh
it's the
wait.
funniest guy she's ever met in her life. She said,
I had a friend who uh, met him regularly through his job, um, and just said he was the nicest guy, but also just
"Yeah,
super funny. But that he's definitely on my list as well. Yeah, I've done a lot of like celebrity events and things where like you don't necessarily get to hang out with people, but like you're around them and you kind of see how they are, and it's interesting. I always try to come up with a really uh, random deep cut reference if I actually have to talk to somebody, like, oh, we're gonna pose everybody together for a photo or something like that. I always try to like get something that's like so uh I don't know, people don't really think about. Like I had Salman Rushdie at an event, and like there were all these VIPs that were
yeah,
going to get a picture with him, and I was like, oh, Mr. Rushdie, I loved you in Seinfeld.
yeah,
And
yeah."
he started cracking up, and everybody else was like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, that's my best work.
I
um
I, I always say pretend like you like each other.
yes.
That
That's one I use a lot too. The
yeah, that always works.
just, and I think also it's nice when you just like run in New York, you run into people on the streets, because people don't. If you've never lived in New York City, you don't realize how small of a town it is. Sometimes you'll like run into people, and like just it's funny. All right. Speaking of running into people on the streets, street photography. Like what was your impetus to get into street photography?
Well, I've been in the business a long, long time, 30 years now for me, and it's always been working as well. So I started very early, 15, and then I was freelancing for the agencies probably about 18, 19 years old.
That's incredible.
So yeah, so as a freelancer, and it's high pressure as well because if you
Yeah.
screw up, they're
Then
not going to call you again.
yep.
Um, so around I started breaking down. I went into through the celebrity route as well. Like I was doing celebrity portraiture and paparazzi work and everything. That was what brought me over to the States. And then I started to break probably around 2005 and figured out, right, I better figure out some kind of solution to this
Yeah.
because otherwise this is not going to be a good path, especially if you have a photography background as well.
Yeah.
So I picked up, a camera that I always wanted, which was a Leica. Managed to actually was making money. That's the nice thing people forget about living over here. You can actually make money over here. When I left the UK, I was making £13,500 a year, and all of a sudden you're making like 10 times that
Yeah.
in your first year. So I was able to buy a Leica and put it in my bag, and that was my carry around camera in the day to kind of take me away from the celebrity stuff that I was doing, and just started building up a body of work. And 2015 was the moment I finally broke, like complete mental breakdown, could not stand being out on the street anymore, and decided, right, I'm just going to go full hog with the street stuff and try to make a name for myself doing that. And here we are.
Here we are. It was a book and everything coming out. So to me, your style, in my humble opinion, is very recognizable. When I'm scrolling through photos on Instagram or anything, like I know, even when it's somebody else posting one of your photos, which I had seen like for some reason somewhere recently, I was like, oh, that's Phil's photo. Like I know, there's something like super recognizable. How did you develop your style for street photography, and were there any specific influences that like shaped your thoughts about how you were going to characterize?
It's the hardest thing, right? I think, to develop a style. Like I always say whenever I'm working with anyone, like teaching anybody, like the first thing is like, all right, well, most importantly, I'm not here to influence what you take pictures of, because then you just become a clone of somebody else. And I think photographers, more so than artists, have a horrible, I don't know what it is, but they just seem to copy a lot. You don't see it as much. Like I was just chatting with my wife about it, and we were trying to we both can't get it. Like your whole thing is you need to stand out from everyone else. So if all you're doing is copying somebody else, like you can be influenced by somebody else's work, but you're not going to just straight up copy.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, because I was doing the celebrity stuff and I had a job and I was making a living doing that, I was able to just create what made me happy, and I didn't care.
Right.
Which is it takes away a lot of the pressure. I think because social media wasn't a big thing when I was coming up, like it didn't exist.
Right.
The way that everyone measured themselves was, well, how much money did you make this month? That was how photographers measured themselves against each other. So because we didn't have the social media, and now people are more interested in how many likes, how many followers can I get? I get it if you're trying to make a living, because that stuff matters. Like if you want to get brand endorsements, maybe I think the scary thing is when you ask people what they want to be. The majority of people say they want to become an influencer, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Right, but it's whether we like it or not, that is the way people are swayed. So if they say, well, hang on, I want to be an influencer, what is popular, they will just start copying each other and copying each other's style, because they think that's what's going to
People
happen.
want.
But
They think that's what people react to.
But it's so short term. Like I can look at the way that social media algorithms work. Right, you're never going to win that,
No.
because you're not dealing with a person, you're dealing with a computer. It's better if you understand. You can't take any of it personally, which is very hard, because you have to realize it has nothing to do with your work or your content.
Yeah, it's
like nothing.
It's like I see people going, oh, this is how you like beat the algorithm or whatever, and I was like, it's always some trick. It'll change in a week, and there are certain things like we can see like that are just like engagement, like tricks to try to get people like misspelling like words. It's so that people will be like, you spelled whatever wrong. And I'm just like, so that they falsely get engagement.
Oh, I do that because I'm dyslexic. That's why.
No, there are
That's
people who
why.
do it just like on purpose. Will just do it like in YouTube titles, like titling their YouTube video with a misspelled word so that they'll get people commenting on it saying you didn't spell this correctly, just to like get that engagement to try to like get more eyes on their stuff. And I'm like, oh, come on. It's just, I can see through that. Like I can
Well,
see through, like
I
anybody with any like sort of critical thinking
yeah.
can see through that sort of stuff. But whatever. Like I
I
think that you were talking about like you copying people. I heard a long time ago somebody else said this, like you can imitate, you can emulate, or you can innovate. And I think that right now there's just a lot of imitation because it's a lot of people who are untrained anyway, and they're just like, oh, what does this person do? You see in like online photography forums where they're like, how do I take a picture like this? How do I make this picture? Like, and be like, and somebody will like throw out some camera settings, and you're just like, what do you
Oh
why
yeah, I love.
why
That's always my favorite. That's always my favorite. It's. I try to figure it out because it's so foreign from where we began.
Mm,
And we, me and my buddy, we were doing a Leica Academy. Charlie, he works for Leica UK, and there's a Elliot Erwitt exhibition that's currently going on in Mayfair, and we had the class of people in the room, and we would, you get all these people that are obsessed with critical sharpness and edge to edge and the lenses and all this. And I said, well, okay, look around the room. 15 of these images are out of focus, and 5 of them are setups. Now I've just debunked all your theories in one exhibition. And they looked around and were like, holy shit, yeah. I'm like, yeah, it's got nothing to do with critical sharpness. It's like, do you look at it? Do you feel something from it?
right.
If you don't, then it hasn't done the job. The photographer hasn't been able to convey in the picture what they wanted to you.
Yeah, I always tell people that emotional weight uh, always counters technical perfection. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like if you're not getting like what I will deliver images to my clients for certain types of jobs that are like slightly out of focus, and that's become a big thing in the last couple of years was out of focus photos, and I like see that people doing it with no intention. Like I'm just going to take this, you know, it's just going to be totally out of focus. Like you're not getting the point of why the
Right.
picture is out of focus. It's there's a reason for it's out of focus, or like somebody did this with intention, or this moment was just happening, and there was not
Mm,
time to focus
yeah.
in like really sharply on it. Like I was like, there's a lot of things going on. It's not just I went out here and made sure that my subject wasn't actually in focus. That's not the
Oh yeah.
reason. Yeah, it's there's a lot of things that go into it, and I think that there's a lot of people who are trying to be influential photographers uh, who don't see the intention behind why like some of these great photos aren't in sharp focus, whatever. Like there's just even when they like admit to like it doesn't have to be like perfectly sharp, they don't necessarily see why. You have to
Well,
think
not everyone can be one though.
right.
Like it's I don't pretend to understand tax law
Yeah,
or being a lawyer, a copyright lawyer, um, or even a painter. So why would it be any different with photography?
yeah,
Like you can't, you like, okay, you can understand a camera, you can understand the technical part of a camera, but you might not have had a hard upbringing. You might not have a certain perspective on life. Like the, all the camera is capturing is what you've done, your past experiences, how you view the world. You're never going to be able to do what that person could do because maybe you didn't have the same upbringing. So if you are going to show me your pictures, show me who you are,
yeah.
right? I want to know who you are, not like, okay, a rip off of that guy.
Right. You bring yourself into the picture. You can't just like go in there. It's the people that I see a lot of times, and like I said in forums, are like, what are the oh your picture's great. What are the camera settings? It's like That's not gonna like you're gonna go out there
Yeah.
and recreate this exact like you don't.
Always say if it brings them joy, like if they have fun from
Yeah,
it, great. Okay, like I've nothing wrong with that. Like, but if you are doing it just to chase likes or something like that,
yeah,
then you're probably in the wrong thing. And to be honest with you, you really should we shouldn't be worried about them because they're probably going to move on to the next thing within a year anyway.
yeah. Well, what I've noticed becoming more, my like sort of like bird's eye view of the industry over the last 25 years is that it used to be like there were certain people who were, like did it on the weekend, who just like were like, this is my other job. There were hobbyists, there were pros. Now we've got this wave of people who like, I'm going to do this for 5 years, make as much money as I can. Like that's their sort of thought process, and then I'm going to move
Well,
on to
that's the mistake right there,
yeah,
right? It's you become driven by money, and like we're all guilty of it at some point in our career. We've probably been driven by the money. Like when I was like, it's almost it makes me laugh now. Like when I was doing paparazzi work, we would complain if we were getting like 25 grand a month
yeah,
because the money being made in that industry at that time was so astronomical. And you look back at it and you're like, what an asshole that guy was.
right,
Me.
yeah,
Like you're complaining about making that kind of money because you knew you were getting robbed, but it was to what degree? Like whenever I
to
would
what
have a
end?
good
Yeah,
check, yeah, to like you knew you were getting take like you were just getting ripped off, but it was like, all right, well, how much? And I think that was one thing that would get us wound up. But it's like with this, the work that I was doing, it was like, okay, you've taken away the money thing altogether, and it just became purely about enjoyment because you've gone into it knowing that there's no money in this.
right. The only money is like what happened, like if you turn it into something. The I don't know. This is very specifically to your work. And having lived in New York for 20 years, the the feeling that I get from your photos is this sort of timeless. It has a very, to me, it has a 40s, like being a student of older, like photography, like from throughout the years. It has a very 40s, 50s, 60s feel to me. But I think overall it's a very timeless thing. I think it's maybe because it's all black and white. It also like there's nothing that gives away what era it's in some way. Like like colors can tend to give away like an era of photography. Um, how much do you feel that when you go and you're doing like street photography, specifically New York, how much do you feel that the city itself is a character in the pictures? Like that's something you're interacting with. Does that?
So um, it all depends on how you view New York, right? So like I'm hardcore New York, have been since I was a kid. My wife, she's the same hardcore New York, and said to me, which I totally agree with, is we both feel that New York is a person. And you can feel it when you go out on the streets in the day. You can feel if it's a bad day.
Yeah,
Like if
you
there's a
know.
if there's a bad energy in the day in the air, you know there is. You know when it's a good day, and it's not everyone's going to have that same affinity. Like you remember that most people live in New York for 2 years maximum because it's either they couldn't hack it or it just became too expensive, which for most is the biggest problem. Uh, for me, because I just love the city, that will come across in your pictures.
Yeah,
Like you're not going out there to make it look bad.
there's a
You're trying to capture the pulse of the city during a day, and also it's going to be, who's interesting to you. Like the people that are interesting to me are the New Yorkers.
right.
Like I think New Yorkers are some of the best people out there. Like You have a question, wait, you need to get someone
Yeah.
somewhere. They'll take their phone out and show you on Google Maps,
Yeah. They'll just tell you how
right?
to get there, and
Yeah,
they'll point it out to you. I think that New York gets a bad rap, and I agree. I completely. New York is alive. It is alive, and what you said about like knowing whether it's a good or bad day, it's just a feeling that you get, and like the longer you live there, like the more attuned you get to it, and just kind of like feeling
yeah,
how things are going. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't originally from New York, but like there, and maybe that's why people always ask me for directions. They always assumed I knew where the things were. And this was before Google Maps was the thing. They just like pull
yeah,
up to me and they'd be driving on the street and they pull up to me and they go, "Hey, do you know how to get to whatever?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you just go up here, take a left at the CVS, the second CVS, not the first one, the second one, and then go up a
yeah.
few blocks, whatever." And like, but you'll see it on the subway when somebody's like, "Oh, like a tourist will be like, I don't know, I'm trying to get to," like you can see they're trying to figure out how to get somewhere, and someone will say,
Oh yeah, you have to ask them.
Where are you trying to
Yeah,
go?" And then they're like, "I'm trying to go here." Like somebody will look around like, "Anybody going there?" And then he's like, "Yeah, I'm going there. I'll stay. I'll let you know when you need to get off." And they're like,
yeah.
"Oh, okay."
It's crazy. You wouldn't get that in a lot of cities, and so it's like it's a great place. We all have like New Yorkers. You have a love hate relationship with it as well.
Mhm.
Like there are moments where you're like it's kicking your ass, you know.
Yeah,
Um, but so I go out there. I want to photograph. I want to do it honestly. Depict New York as I see it, and it's just how I see it. Uh, so that's the game plan. Whenever I go out there,
I find
it's
I feel like New York has a very is very direct. It doesn't beat around the bush.
no,
It comes at you. It doesn't. It's not. Whereas you might have like Paris is more aloof. Like in some ways, it's just sort of like, yeah. Like I don't
yeah,
bother. My favorite thing is when my wife and I went to Paris, and one time we were like listening to the metro. In New York, it's always like, "This is the stop. It's 42nd Street. Get off the street. Get off of this. You're getting into 42nd Street." Whereas like in Paris, it's like Saint-Germain-du-Pré, Saint-Germain-du-Pré. Like, is this your stop? If this
yeah.
is your stop, it's
So
not.
yeah, Tokyo has an even lighter twist to it as well when it's telling you the subway. Everything's so calm and mellow. You got the birds chirping. They like pump in these bird noises and stuff. Yeah, here it's just very aggressive. Like get out of the way. It's
Get out.
42nd Street.
Yeah, don't
Yeah,
stand in the
but
way.
it's yeah, it's why I wanted to be here, and it's also like coming from England as well. Like over there, we really have that class system. Okay, like there's this thing of like if you do well, a lot of people don't like that. They definitely don't want you to say that you're doing well. Like I learned within the first year of going back to see my friends, I knew when they asked me, what am I up to, I knew not to say, just lie. Nothing, because if you said, hey, yeah, I was doing portraits of Christopher Reeve last week in his house, it's just like who the hell do you think you are? Like, but
Yeah,
here it's like people like you can succeed over here. You can do really well if you're willing to work hard, because people don't realize how hard you have to work here.
yeah,
Like it's no joke. It's not just Americans coming here. It's people from some of the best of the best from all over the world coming to New York to compete against each other.
yeah. And
You know?
it's whether or not can you hack it? Like, can you take it? And are
Yeah.
you willing to put in the work to, I don't know, survive? I had a good friend from high school who moved here to work for Marvel in the '90s, late '90s. This was before it was they started making money off of movies. Um, but he lived in Brooklyn for about 6 months and was just like, can't do it. I can't, I can't do it. Like we were like moved here at about the same time, and he was just like, yeah, it's too much for me. I can't do it. And when we talk, he'll still be like, oh,
I
it's,
wish.
I wish. So I have a question.
Think-
And
Yeah.
looking at your photos, especially in New York, there are certain locations that you seem to frequent. How do you decide on location? Like if you're going out for a shoot, just to go out. I don't know. What's your process for deciding where you're going to go, or do you decide on the location, or do you decide on like what kind of moment that you're looking for when you're going out, or does it like, is yeah? What's that process like? Do you say like I'm
A
going
lot of
down
it's
to
yeah,
Brooklyn Bridge
a lot
today?
of it's influenced by the weather. So if it's really, I do a lot of research on light, and you know, if it's like a bad day like today, and I want to like it's pouring down outside, I know that right. I probably want to be close to the rivers
Hmm.
because I want a little bit more atmosphere in the background. If I go into Midtown, it might be that I'm looking for, I know that when it's raining and it's cold, the steam pipes are going to be exploding like crazy. So I might say, you know what, I know of a few steam pipes in Midtown that might be pretty good. Um, Generally, I start pretty early in the morning as well when I go out for myself. So the weather will dictate. If it's snowing, right, it might be that going back to like the 40s, 50s, 60s look.
Yeah.
That's because those are eras that I would have loved to have been around photographing in. So I figure, all right, well, what are areas of the town? If I want it to feel like those eras, the snow is going to instantly get rid of half the background, things that's going to date an image.
Right.
So I'll go, all right, maybe I'm going to go and hit Park Avenue in the 70s because a lot of the buildings up there, if you shoot in the snow and it's really thick blizzard, people are not going to know.
Right. You can't tell the difference.
No. So if it's like that, that's one thing. Then you have like, all right, I know that at probably 1 week of the year, Grand Central is going to get hit with amazing sunlight coming through the windows. I have it marked down on my calendar when that week is, and I'll start researching or at least 1 to 2 weeks before I know it's going to hit. Because, I don't know if you ever look, but it's a tiny
Yeah.
window and it comes through there from that. You've got the UN blocking the street at the end of the road. So if it's not in a specific place, I'll go, right, I know that I'm going to shoot that. Or it could be the Oculus. Like I go in the Oculus, I know that there's going to be 20 to 30-minute windows where that light is going to come down through the top. And then the best ones are the ones that where it's like you just stumble across something or you see someone really interesting, like an interesting portrait or a quick candid moment, but I can't go out thinking that way, just like, oh, I'm just going to capture moments. I have no people feel that they can just point a picture at people and
Right.
take a shot and that's a shot. And it's like, no, it's not. It's like, okay, what else, what else do you have to add than just shooting from your hip of a person walking towards you?
Right. Yeah.
Like anyone can go do that. So what else do you have to add to that picture? So you're not setting stuff up other than when you're doing a portrait and you're chatting with people, but those are the things I strive for, but I know enough that I'm just not going to bump into pictures like the one that I have where you've got the dog looking in the window of a bunch of dogs.
Yeah.
That it's just not going to
You're not
happen.
going to go
So
looking for that and find it. It's just going to
no,
happen.
you're setting yourself up for failure, and I'd rather go out there and shoot a bunch of steam pictures and have fun enjoying doing it. And then if I stumble across a really cool image, then great. But I always tell people you're going to see, and you can see it with like the greats. They might have 5 to 10
Right.
great images to their names. So if you think that you're going to go out there and just capture great images all the time, again, you're setting yourself up for massive failure. So figure out you better really enjoy what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. Because otherwise, it's
Otherwise,
not.
what's the point?
They're not all good. I think that's a big trap that people fall into. They're like, oh, I gotta have so many like great photos from every shoot. No, you might go out there and not take
Yeah.
anything good. Like it might just
Just get one good one.
yeah,
Just get one good one. When you go out, just think like that. I just need to get one good one. Not great.
yeah,
I can honestly say to myself, like I probably have two big ones in my collection. and from 30 years, and now came down to the fact that the event that I was photographing, not the pictures themselves.
Hmm. I don't know. I think that it's really interesting that you what you said about like researching the light and knowing when the light is going to be in certain places. I know exactly like what week you're talking about with the light in Grand Central, because when I was first moved here, like I just discovered it by accident. And I was like, wow, the light in here is great. Yeah. And then I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, I'm going to come back here. And then I was like, 2 weeks later, I'm like, huh, this sucks now.
Yeah.
Oh, it's because of the shadows from the buildings. And like that's how I discovered it. But there are also shots in your portfolio. I think very specifically some of like look like not like an alley, but like a side street, but where there's just like this geometric shape of light that people sort of like walk into. Like you've got like a lot of
Right.
shadow, and then just like people coming into these shapes. And I'm like, okay, this is why I asked that question to begin with. Was I'm like, do you know that that light is going to be there? And then
Ah,
you're like,
that's just chasing light. That's something I do for myself to keep my skills, to keep like pushing myself. So if I know it's going to be a really sunny day, like we're lucky we have the canyons that kind of block things out.
yeah,
A good way to just train yourself is just to walk around and just get used to chasing light. So you see like a pocket of light hitting a wall down the street, go towards it, practice shooting in that one spot, and then move on to the next spot. And then every time you do it, you keep learning something new. And then the thing is, you're trying to you can't just take pictures of people, silhouettes of people in light.
right,
All right, it's gonna get really boring after a while. So then you have to start figuring out, well, how can I use this pocket of light with an interesting background, with interesting looking people, and framing it some unique way.
right, and waiting for the moment where that all sort of corresponds and like comes together. It's not just like it's not like you're just gonna walk up there and like, oh, I'm gonna take this picture. Hey, everything is like you have to
Yeah,
like be patient. I think patience is a lost art form
yeah,
amongst photographers too. Like okay, I'm gonna have to sit here and I'm gonna have to like at least for a little while to like look for the things that are interesting and wait for that. You know,
Well, I think a lot of photographers as well, they kind of limit themselves. And I'm it's so foreign as well. Like coming from a press background, we were doing different job every 30 minutes, every hour, and every job was different. And you needed to be able to shoot each job differently. You had to become a different photographer every 30 minutes. And so I don't understand. A lot of the time you'll get photographers who will, you know, they just shoot and move, shoot and move.
mm,
And then the thing is, you need to learn how to be like, all right, I need to be patient on this one. Like they always say, right, you're either a hunter or a fisherman,
right.
right? Those are the two expressions. So why do you want to listen to that? And why do you want to limit yourself to just one? Because you made it so easy for the rest of us.
Right.
Because you need to be able to do both
Yeah. He's not
and
just
know when to do it.
right. Like being like to have the presence of mind to know what mode you should be in is a I think determines average from good from
Yeah.
great. I think that's a big thing. So here's the thought. Like with there's so much visual stimulation in New York. You were just mentioning Tokyo. How do you maintain that sense of observation and not sort of getting lost in all that's going on to when you're hunting? Yeah, like how do you maintain the feeling of like, okay, I'm looking for things when there's just so much going on? Is there like rituals you go through, or is it just like sort of like a mindset that you get into before you get into that mode?
Well, my old man, he told me, he said, whenever you travel somewhere, start shooting immediately because your eye will adjust to your environment. So what you find interesting immediately is not going to be interesting to your eye 2-3 days from now.
Mm.
So it's a good practice to get in the habit of. As soon as you go anywhere, just get the camera out and start shooting. So that's a good tip for whenever you go anywhere. Another thing that I tend to do is I'm always trying to outdo myself.
Mm.
Like I'm always trying to beat my last picture. You know, the old famous expression is you're only as good as your last picture.
Yeah.
I don't know how much. And my last picture wasn't very good. So if by that logic, you go, right, well, I'm going to go out and all I'm going to do today is practice things. And forcing yourself, this is like a newspaper trick as well,
Mm.
is whenever you're hired to do anything, you have to figure out every single angle. Like if someone said to you, I need you to photograph this building, you would have to give them 20 different images of that building.
Right.
So if you're literally struggling to figure out, all right, what else do I have around here that I could use to make this different? And I do that on everything I shoot. I'm always just trying to figure out, like, right, how can I make this better? How can I outdo the last picture? And it just forces you to see things.
Yeah. See things differently. Yeah. From like assignments in print, whatever the thing. We need a picture of this installation. I do a lot of stuff with like art publications. Like, we need a photo of this. I'm like, okay, well, you're going to need like a dozen different photos of this, different angles,
Oh
different
yeah,
like orientations, because depending on how they lay out the page. Like you're,
yeah.
like, and to have that in mind, like, oh, they might need a vertical image, they might need a horizontal image, they might need a couple different
People
things.
don't get that.
Yeah,
It's newsflash to everyone. You do not get to dictate the paper or the newspaper or magazine that you're working for. Most of the time, the page has already been pre-laid out,
yep,
and there is a box. And if your picture doesn't fit that box, you're in trouble.
yeah. You are in a lot of trouble because
Hmm.
they're not laying out the page because
Yeah.
you got an awesome like landscape shot, but they need something that can fit in a square or like that's all you've got to go with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to start using that myself. Just start immediately taking pictures once I get somewhere. So, okay. So, all right, let's get a little bit technical. Would you say that there are any?
You lost me at aperture. Sorry.
I didn't say it. I didn't say it. I was going to say, are there any specific techniques in street photography that you find when you get somewhere to like start with, like get yourself going? I mean, I know you're just like shooting what you said, what you're shooting, what you find interesting, but like technically, are there any things that you do to kind of like just to warm yourself up in that space, whatever like city that you're in? Are you like, I'm just gonna? You have a very distinct style, I think, personally, but like there's you have your long exposure stuff, and there's like
Yeah.
other things. Like, do you start with things like that and then bring it down to more, I guess, sharp things like after you kind of get a feel of where you're at?
Well, I try to get a feel for the place that where I am. Like when I was in Tokyo, it kind of what I liked was like there was this. It felt like there was this constant flow of motion, but everything was just very peaceful. It's not like here where people are erratic. There, it was everything was very peaceful, but it was constantly flowing. So in my brain, I'm like, maybe that's a way that I could show something in pictures where I'm just doing a series of images where it's just constantly moving motion, but you'll just have like little like so you're doing like panning
Mm.
on different shots, and then it might be, I was in London, and it's like they're really smart with the advertising billboards. So like there'll be a picture of a woman on a taxi door, and then you've got the driver,
Right.
and then you think you start seeing all these different shots everywhere, all these amazing billboards with people, and you're like, all right, you know what, for London for this trip, I'm going to home in on that.
Right. I know what you're talking about, like how these the advertising sort of lines up with actual people in the
Yeah,
space,
yeah.
and
And
they
So I'll adjust based on the city. Like, I go to Paris and it's like I love the way that everyone dresses there, like the
Mm,
classic looking. It lends very well to timeless images. Also, the lighting, the light there. Um, that might influence my trip as well. And then the next time I might see something else. So those are things that I like. Again, it's like a feeling that a city gives me. I was just in like 2 3 weeks ago. I was in Basel, Switzerland, doing something out there, and it was like very old and timeless feeling again. So I kind of gravitated to that. But then I also have like these rituals of like, again from press where, all right, that's my background, that's one layer. I'm going to use these kinds of people in the shot, like, but are there, I don't know, reflective surfaces I can use? Is there something that I can use to frame the image? Maybe a car door, maybe it's a rear view mirror or something off of the side of a bike. Like I'm looking for things, actively looking at everything kind of behind me to see what can I use to capture what I'm seeing rather than just shooting a very flat image.
right. Looking for layers like to put on top
Yeah.
of. Um, the more layers you have, well, not necessarily, you don't need a million of them, but like layering creates more literally depth to the image than just sort of this flat shot. Um, this kind of brings me to a question we had from our audience from at jc.kodak on Instagram. What's your favorite city to do street photography in?
Don't think I really have one.
He takes the easy way out.
No,
I
it's
know
like
they're all different.
they're all different. One, they're all different. You
Each
know
one
what
is
it
like a
is? No, it's not. It's an adrenaline rush. Okay, so whether you've been fortunate enough to experience it yet, there's a certain rush you get from taking a certain kind of picture, and it's almost like a high.
mm,
I've had it. I've had it maybe 2 or 3 times in my life where what you're seeing or what you're capturing, like you don't even need the camera, but what you're visually seeing is so overwhelming that it's like you almost well up,
yeah.
right? And you're chasing that high, and it doesn't matter what city it's in. I'm chasing that high. So I've had one or two in New York. I know I've had one in Paris. That's what I'm chasing, and
Yeah.
that again, that's like the paparazzi mindset. Like you were adrenaline. We were adrenaline chasers.
Yeah.
Um, that was the high, and then the biggest thing was getting the picture and then knowing how much it just sold for.
Yeah. There's that's a yeah, a high for sure. Like
It was a huge high.
yeah.
You could make more money in one day than some people make in their entire lives, and
Yeah.
you can't take that for granted. So I don't know. As far as like cities, obviously New York. I love New York.
It's an impossible
But sure,
question. It's yeah,
yeah, I'm very lucky in that I have a very amazing lifestyle now. That I've worked 30 years to create. It doesn't
right.
happen overnight, but where I can travel every month to a different city around the world and meet great people and get to shoot in those cities.
And take the time to be able to go out and take pictures.
Yeah.
It's one of those things like I think that if we go back earlier in our conversation, people talking about wanting to be influencers, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to travel all over and I'm going to take photos." They're like, well, there's a certain amount of like legwork involved in that. You don't just like it
Yeah,
just
but they made it easy. They made it so easy for us. You have to remember that. Like most people it aren't prepared to work or they don't know what work is. And don't get me wrong, there are kids out there today who work their asses off.
oh yeah,
And I support that, but the majority they don't want to work. And so if you have any kind of drive or you realize how much work is involved, your chance of success is a lot higher these days. Like back when I was growing up, it was like there were other things that were keeping us back.
Mm,
You had the gatekeepers. Well, you still have the gatekeepers now, right? Who decide who's going to make it or not. But a lot of us have bigger followings than they ever could have.
right.
Like you could now create your own thing where no gatekeeper has any control. It's purely around, do people like the work?
Right.
Not not that you're the son of a billionaire, or that you have some, you're within a certain circle. So if you're willing to work hard and you produce good work, you have as just as good an opportunity to be a success.
Speaking of not wanting to do the work, I recently got one of your Instagram captions said AI actual imagery, um, which I found very poignant because recently I found two Instagram accounts that I was following because I was really like found it very interesting that were both entirely AI, and I have a very critical eye, and I was like, oh man, this is not good because it only gets better from here and being able to fool people. Like it's not the technology is not going to get worse. But there was this guy, and I'm not going to name names. Maybe I will at some point. But he. Um, I'll send it to you afterwards so you
Okay.
can see.
Yeah.
But it was all this very avant-garde looking fashion stuff, and I just kept looking at
Okay.
it, going like, "This guy's. I mean, he's really like doing stuff. Like obviously, some of it looked like it was like taking like cutouts of photos and like painting over them, and some of them, and other ones were just. But then there were like full body shots, and the limbs look correct, and the hands are right, and everything. And you're sitting there going like, man, this guy's really he's pretty good. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's like one that is so obviously AI, and you're just going, and
Oh,
you're shocked out of it, going like, what? We're all, and it, like I went back, and the captions are long, and there's a little like there's one hashtag at the bottom that says AI art. So you like really have to dig in and like see that he's like,
wow.
and you're going, huh. And then there was another one that was which your comment about saying like get up off the couch and actually like go out and take a picture got me because this was a uh, landscape photographer,
Yeah.
and it's actual places, and I was like, oh, these are really good. And then like I started, there were a lot of carousels, and I would only because I don't try not to spend too much time on social
In the
media.
sea.
What's that?
In the sea.
No,
Carousel in the
no,
sea.
no.
Yeah.
No, just a carousel of images. And I wasn't like swiping through all of them
Yeah.
because I just don't like to spend a lot of time on social media.
Yeah.
But I look at a couple and I'd be going, oh, these are pretty good. And then one time I like started going through, and like the last two were like, this doesn't look real. What's going on here? There's something off about these. So I started going back through them and like going to the end, and I'm like, these are like the last two are always kind of off. Like as somebody, like, and I was like, what's going on? And then I started again. It was somebody who put in like these huge captions, and then at the very end was saying like, this is all created with AI software. It's a combination of my imaginings of what this location looks like and whatever, but
Mm.
also like it's totally presented at the top of the caption like I went out and took this photos of this place, and then but then at the end you're getting like this very like after like it's like
Yeah.
20 paragraphs, and then at the bottom it's like
Do you know the scary thing? Is that caption was created with AI as
yeah, I'm
well.
sure. And I'm sure
Yeah.
it's huge. I'm sure it's huge to keep people from knowing. Like he's saying, "Oh, I'm telling you, it's AI." But at the give me a
Yeah, but it's, you know what? It's like, if that's what you want to do, good on you. If that gives you kicks, good on you. But you're not a photographer.
well. That's the problem I had with it was because
You,
other people who were fooled in the
mm,
comment section were saying like, "This is a great photograph," and he'd be like, "Oh, thank you."
yeah, you're
And
not.
you're not a photographer. You're not a photographer.
You're not a photographer. You could be an artist.
Yeah,
You- Um, you're more a creative curator that works for a creative an art agency.
Yeah.
That's I would probably attest more to that. Like, obviously photography, we're going to see, well, not photography, but commercial marketing. That's going to go down that route because they can save on their budgets. But
Oh, yeah.
uh, it's you kind of miss the point, man.
Yeah.
The whole point of it is being out there and meeting people and feeling what it feels like to be there. So,
Yeah. And it's like this.
it's whatever. There's lots of famous photographers that have done that themselves, where it's not AI, but it's like Photoshop, where they're manipulating, removing people from pictures to make the compositions. Like, it used to piss me off because I would be measuring myself
By other
when I was
people.
growing up on by other photographers, and then you find out that none of it was real. Like, it was photoshopped and hacked, and you're like, I was measuring myself against something that never happened.
Right.
And you just like, well, I wouldn't have felt so bad, like knocking myself, like, well, why can't I do this? Why can I not be this good? And if I knew that
Why can't I
neither were
find these
they,
moments? Yeah.
yeah, why they're not either. They're not that good either.
Right.
Um, and then problem is, once you know that about someone, then everything they've done has been second guessed. Like, I know with the well pressed photo, like, I think every year 1/3 of the
Yeah.
entries get thrown out. But so what are you doing it for?
Right.
Again, for likes, or
Right. And then you
you're
find like,
never going to be happy. You're never personally going to be happy anyway if that's what you're doing it for.
yeah. And then you see the people who like will win these awards, and then somebody's like, is like actually analyzes and goes, this is horribly photoshopped. Like, this somebody's like, like they did a lot of work on this, and they're like, oh, well, we gotta rescind their win or whatever, and like take it back. And like, well, and it just encourages other people to like,
But
how,
you're never going to win it. You're never going to win that battle, though, because you look at, like, you take it away from photography, right? What are people willing to do in the finance world to make money? What are
oh,
people? What are people? What are people? Athletes, like, and I've been caught up in this myself. I was a professional cyclist, where, well, semi-professional, let's say. But when I was racing, some most people that I knew were busted doing drugs,
yeah,
and you're just like, well, like, you've missed the point. Like, so in every kind of field of life, someone is going to be willing to cheat to try to get ahead, but it doesn't mean they're going to be happy.
right. Or that, I think that a lot of something that photographers in general could benefit from is like to stop comparing yourself. Just, just stop. Like, there's a, like the not comparing, but judging yourself in comparison to other people. Everybody has a different journey. Everybody's trying to do their thing. And like, you need to find your thing. And
Mm.
like, you're competing, like you said earlier, I'm trying to outdo my last picture. Like, stop thinking so much about like looking at somebody else's work. You can look at it and go like, that's an amazing picture, whatever. Like, that like inspires me to do something or whatever, but not sitting there going like, the value of my photography to me depends on what someone else did. Because I think if when you can get out of that mindset, there will be a lot less, because like you said, you're never going to stop people from quote unquote cheating in some way to try to get a better picture or whatever. But if you're only competing technically against yourself, like there's no,
Which it's only cheating if you are trying to portray yourself as something that you're not.
right,
Like, you're saying you're a photographer, but then you're creating it with AI and you're trying to hide that. If you are creating AI images and it's your art piece, and you full disclaimer about it, and it makes you happy, good on you. But you're not a photographer.
yeah, it's
That's
just,
all.
yeah. The funny thing was, is like
Plain
this
and simple.
with the guy who was doing the fashion stuff. I was interested in like how he was doing it because like the people look very real. The eyes looked real, and I was like, oh, is he using his own images and doing something on top of it? Like, is there something going? Like, is it some combination? And I reached out to him and said, just curious. if you'd like to come on and discuss this, because people have a lot of feelings about AI. Like, your stuff is really, really interesting, and I'm curious. He's like, I refuse to discuss my process with anyone, and I was just like, okay, that's your thing, man. Like, go ahead. Like, if you're guarding that for whatever reason, but I was just like wondering if you use your own photos. He's like, I refuse to answer
Yeah.
that question.
Some people are some people are fine with it. I remember I got asked to comment on it. There was a debate between two podcasters talking about it, and one of them was very, it was like the two sides. One was pro, one was not, and it was like that it's not going to affect the industry. And I'm like, and this was going back a few months, and lots of my friends have lost their
Yeah,
jobs because of this. So, my point back then was, what do I think about it? And said, I can't really support anything that's going to lose my friends their
job.
jobs.
Yeah,
And the point was made that, oh, you're just making it up, and this is not going to happen. And it's like, well, okay, I was right.
yeah. I mean,
Unfortunately,
in my opinion, commercial product fashion are probably, there's all going to be like huge impacts there that if you're not already feeling it, just because, like you said, the expense. People don't realize how expensive it is to put together some of these fashion shoots, or like, like, oh, I'm going to do products like Levi's. Like, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe not quite so long, but like, we're saying something about like, oh, we're going to start using AI models in our advertising to help support diversity. And people were like, oh, why don't you just hire diverse models? And they're like, they're trying to save money. They're going to sit there and like, oh, we need somebody, like, we need more diversity of size, like different sizes of people, different shapes of people. The amount of time it would take them to do casting calls to get all the different
mm,
sizes they want, the people that they like the look, whatever. Like, I'm not saying it's right, but I get where it's coming. The mindset is coming from. It's easier for me to have a bunch of people of all ethnicities and sizes, whatever, if I don't have to actually go out and hire them. Like,
well, think about it. Like, all of a sudden, I've done shoots where it's like, you know, 200-300 grand on the line.
yeah,
Okay, for a commercial shoot where you've shut down city roads, you've got police involved, to create a picture.
right,
That, people don't realize the cost. Say you have a $300,000 job. The job might actually cost 200,000 to produce it.
yeah,
All right. So you're paying for parking on the street. That lost money. Any parking lots that you've had to take over, you're now paying for that. All of this stuff. And now all of a sudden, you could be some small company that doesn't have 200, 300, $400,000 budgets and create the same image
yeah,
for a fraction.
right. You don't have to.
You
Or the headache
you
of the
have that
permits.
ability.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
head
Oh yeah.
and getting all the logistics together of getting all the, like, not just the regular expenses, but all of the logistics involved. I get it. I understand why it's really appealing. Do I think it kind of sucks for people who are losing their jobs? Yeah, I definitely think it sucks for the photographers who are losing their jobs. I also think that, you know other, like, photographers need to understand the seriousness of it in the sense of how it's going to affect them. But they're also, I think, like you said, there are places for it. I wish there was a
Well, look at
kind
the
of,
film industry
yeah,
right now. Look what's going on with the film industry. Yeah, right now we're witnessing basically the battle going on between these people trying to save their industry
yeah,
versus studios who know that all this technology is there where they don't need these crews, they
right,
don't need to even have sets anymore.
right,
And you're effectively asking an entire industry to go under.
right. Well, the people don't understand, like, when the actors were striking, and they're like, well, what's the big deal? And they're like, they want to scan their bodies and use their voices in
They were going to
perpetuity.
sell them.
Yeah, in
The
perpetuity.
agencies were the agencies were selling that. Like, and I don't know why certain stars were like, "Yeah, I'm going to sell my voice and my look."
Yeah, it's over. It's like, once they have control over it, once you're giving it to somebody. The
Yeah.
one that got me was, I used to do voiceovers, um, And one of the things was for voiceover people, like people who do cartoons or anything like that. They were like, once you record an episode or a season or whatever, we're going to own your voice, and we can make as many seasons of this show as we want to and use your AI reproduced voice and never have to pay you another dime. Like
Amazing.
it's just like you are without any sort of repercussions. Like it's just like
Mm.
they now own you as a performer and can like do whatever they want without compensating you. And I was like, that's what that's about. And I think that there's, to an extent, we need to be concerned in our in our industry about how it's going to affect you know
Well,
parts of it.
well, I think it, to me, it's, none of this is none of this is new, right? They've been using this in government for the last 10 to 15 years. So, like, anyone that thinks this stuff is new technology, sorry,
Oh,
it's not. Um, you know, the biggest thing that I see is the copyright issue, and they all know it. Like, the lawsuits are coming. If you ever searched on Chat GPT to create an image in the style of, it means they can be sued.
right.
And I know for a fact, like, the bigger companies are having to scrape the servers right now because everything on there has to be, they have to have the copyright
Right.
for
They have
it.
to have the license to use it, which is
Like, that's going on right now.
why all those people who like use AI filters in their Instagram or on TikTok or whatever, you have eh, give, given you a license to use your image in
Mm.
future data
Didn't,
sets just by
didn't
you.
Adobe try that recently?
Adobe has licensed images. They use their like Adobe stock. That was like what was used to train, and also people were being compensated. Like the owners of the copyright for the images are being compensated for the use of their images. So that's
Okay.
more ethical. When you have things like whatever Dolly and Mid Journey and whatever, things get into a way grayer area of like how they sourced things, and like they were putting things in, and like, oh, surprisingly, like after an artist, I can't remember who it was, somebody passed away, and like immediately the next day there were over 200,000 queries in Mid Journey to like create art in the style of this artist who had just passed away the day before. So
Wow.
they're like, that's not everyday users. This is the developers of the AI like force
Mm.
feeding this person's images into this so that you can create images in their style, because they're saying like, oh, this is going to go up in popularity because they're dead now and they're not creating anything new. That was really disturbing, and that's part of like what the lawsuits that are going on now are about scraping those data sets and getting like retraining, but
Yeah.
retraining those AI data sets and the models, whatever. But in the time being, all of these people who are giving their faces and I don't think realize it whenever they use one of those AI filters. Part of the agreement there is that when you use those filters, you're allowing them to use your image which is why I don't use them. Not that people want my image of me, but like I don't. Yeah, I just not giving away my image for free or my voice or anything like that. Like that's not.
Right.
I'm sure somebody could. I mean, this podcast is all over the place. Somebody can obviously take it if they want,
Well,
but
they actually did that years ago. The MIT commencement
yeah,
speech with Obama,
yes,
where he did a 5 minute monologue welcoming everyone to MIT, and then they said, "Hey, that whole thing was fake.
yeah.
It never happened."
I remember that. It really scared me in a way. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
when they talk about a post-truth society, that's where I'm like, it becomes more and more difficult to discern things. All right, we're kind of got enough topic.
Yeah.
So I had to finish up, like, bring it back around. So for people who are aspiring street photographers who are trying to find their place in that space, what advice do you have for them for sort of finding their voice, their eye, uh, finding a direction to go into? Not to like copy someone, but like, I mean, like, what advice do you have? Like,
Tough one, right?
yeah,
Because you kind of have it. What's your end goal? First off, like, right, if you think that you're going to come in and you're going to make a ton of money, okay. I was saying somewhere earlier, probably 0.00001% actually make it. Like the chances, okay. So if we're very realistic and we go, okay, I'm going to do this for fun. Like I'm going to do this because I enjoy it. So that's the first thing. Do you enjoy what you're taking pictures of? And if you like shooting in the rain, go ahead, just shoot everything in the rain. But one, got to be willing to work very hard, which I touched on earlier. But really, you have to show me you, and you have to figure right if everything is out there on Instagram. What's going to make somebody stop on your image, right? So it's you have to define your not only your style of what you take pictures of, but also you start thinking of yourself as like, well, what's the look of my edit as well? Like that's important. It might be your brand image. How do you present the work? Okay, because to me, it's always like it's not finished until it's presented.
right,
So there's the presentation, the shooting of the image, how you edit the image, the presentation of the image, all these things. Like you can influence someone the way that they look at your work. It could be the way that you do the carousel.
yeah,
You come up with something unique and creative. Like I realized when Instagram went and turned around and said that we're not promoting picture posts anymore. We're only going to do video. Then it's like, well, shit. How am I going to? I still need to be promoting my work.
right,
And it's like, you know what? I'm gonna take people on the journey of how I take the picture. I'm gonna film the back of my camera when I'm taking the picture. And then all of a sudden that blew up.
right,
And then there was a million people cloning, copying that. So start thinking about like, all right, what am I gonna take pictures of? How am I gonna edit it? What is a unique, fresh presentation way that I can do this as well?
right.
There are people. The thing is, there are people on social media where you can flick through the feed and you instantly know it's their picture.
Yeah, I feel that way about your photos. I like instantly know, like, if you cover up the names, whatever the captions. I feel like I can identify your style. So in that, it's like you've accomplished that for yourself. I think that's
Just enjoy it though. Like I think everyone puts so much pressure on themselves. You know, like I didn't really start really shooting this some good stuff until I really just started. Like I didn't give a shit. Like I wasn't trying to please anyone. Like, you know, it took me, if we go by the follow account thing, right? It took me like 6 years before I hit 10K. And I'm looking at the other workout and going, looking at some of these accounts, they got 600,000 followers. And I'm like, that work's really not that good.
yes,
I'm
yeah,
like, well, hang on. I'm not bad. Like, why can't I make it? So don't get caught up in that shit either.
yeah. Hey there, nerdy photo crew. There's one thing you should never be caught without as a professional photographer, and that's a good contract, both for dealing with your clients and dealing with subcontractors that you may work with along the way. Be sure to head over to nerdyphotographer.com and go to our shop and find our contract templates for portrait photography, event photography, wedding photography, as well as dealing with second photographers, associate photographers, and any other subcontractors that you might have. Check it out and keep your business safe. Do you have your own website? Are you tired of dealing with slow loading pages and poor support from your current web hosting company? Consider switching to SiteGround, the top rated web hosting company that provides 24/7 support and super fast hosting speeds. SiteGround's platform is built on the premium Google Cloud infrastructure, ensuring top reliability, security, and speed for your website. Their fast network and storage provide optimal site speed and a high level of redundancy, so you can trust that your website will be up and running smoothly at all times. With SiteGround's ultra-fast server setup, your pages will load 30% faster on average, giving your visitors a better user experience and improving your website's SEO. And with hosting starting from just $1.99 per month, it's affordable for any budget. Plus, if you're not completely satisfied, SiteGround offers a 30-day money-back guarantee. Don't suffer with a terrible web hosting company any longer. Make the switch to SiteGround and experience top-level support, super fast hosting, and a reliable, secure platform for your website. I spent years with a web hosting company that was absolutely terrible. My site was constantly getting hacked, and support was nearly impossible to get a hold of. Since switching to SiteGround, all of those problems are in the past. Just visit nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/SiteGround or click the link in the episode notes to get started and begin enjoying faster, more reliable web hosting today.
Hey. And now for my favorite part of the show. What's that say? Useless information. This is always death.
Phil, did you know that Napoleon was not actually short?
I'll go on. Was he like 6'4"?
No, it was foreign. They're going to say foreign propagandists, but basically his enemies in other countries who displayed him as a comic figure as being very short. He was actually 5'7", which at the time was taller than the average Frenchman. He was not a very, very short person.
Did you ever hear the one about him with the tomb?
No.
To his deathbed, they claim he went in when they were doing archaeological digs in Egypt, and they were going into the tombs. And he said that it was I can't remember the name of the king or the pharaoh, but he wanted to go in there on his own without any of his troops. They said he came out and he literally looked white as a ghost, and they were like, "What did you see?" And he went to say, and he basically said, I can't tell you. And then apparently he was going to say it on his deathbed, and he stopped himself again. So God knows what he thought, but he feared whatever it was.
He was afraid of it, whatever it was. Phil, thank you very much for being on the show. You're always welcome to come back. Let me know if there's anything you want to talk about. Where can people find you? Where can they find your book?
Done 2 books now. 2019 book called Street. The latest one brought out was called New York Street Diaries. Both of them are available on Amazon, or you can get New York Street Diaries signed on my website, philpenman.com. And then I'm on every one of the 8 million social media platforms. But yeah, I thank you so much for the time today. Great chatting with you.
You're very welcome. People can find all of those links in the episode notes. I will include all of those so that you can go directly go get Phil's books. They're really great. Again, Phil, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Casey.
Did you call those buildings teeth? And maybe show a little less teeth. Oh, hey, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Phil Penman. Be sure to check out the links to Phil's website to see when he might be teaching a workshop near you, as well as his socials, and you can check out his book. It's fantastic. While you're at it, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review and or tell a friend. Remember, and or, preferably and, but possibly or. You can also follow along on our socials, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Reddit, at The Nerdy Photo, all one word, no underscores, dots, or dashes, at The Nerdy Photo. Tell us what you think about this or any other episode that we've put out. Leave your photography related questions so we can answer those in future episodes or on the live Q&As I do on Instagram and TikTok. Or tell us what topics you'd like to hear about in the future. No, I haven't forgotten about you. Until next time, friends, stay safe and stay nerdy.
town. You better start listening. Who's your heart been beating about? You better listen.